Pat Leonard, he's on with us from the New York Daily News. Beat writer, was there as they covered, was in the locker room, been dealing with this whole Odell Beckham Jr. story. Good morning, Roger Weiland and Albany. Pat, how are you?
Hey, Roger. Great. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for a few minutes. What do you make of the craziness? Let's just start with a wide open. What do you make as a beat writer covering this team and covering Odell Beckham Jr.? What do you make of the craziness?
Well, as far as he goes, I would say anytime a guy has a performance like that, I mean, to basically put the team on his back, I mean, it's a reminder of why the Giants put up with maybe the negative stuff or the sideshow or the distraction elements that we see, especially when it's a loss, as you're talking about, and these types of things happen. It's more of a distraction rather than just something that accompanies a great performance. But it reminds you why not just the Giants, but any team with a star player might tolerate just a little bit more. And that's how I feel about it, too, is kind of, like in Green Bay, when he scored his touchdown and went over and, was kissing the net and everything, and my first reaction is, who has time for this right now? This team is going to lose this game. This is not called for in this situation. But I think, as you can see, too, when he makes a big play, it's almost like he can't control his emotion. Now, I think that this season he has channeled it much better than he did last year. I think a lot of people were upset with what happened in the Washington game with him hitting the net. I mean, he did lose his cool, but I thought it was nice of him to just go over to the side and do it to an inanimate object. But I think it's interesting that he can't just, like I'm old school. Like I love Barry Sanders, running into the end zone, hand the ball to the official and go to the sideline. So that's my idea of a star player scoring a touchdown. But as long as he's helping the team win, and they clearly need him to do that, I think they have to deal with it.
What about the players on the team? How do they feel?
One of the more interesting moments I saw was actually on Inside the NFL. They showed in the Green Bay game when Odell did that, and I was saying, this is not the right time. Inside the NFL had like a clip of Casillas and a couple of the players, laughing hysterically at it on the sideline. I mean, maybe somebody like me, is taking it a little too seriously and forgetting that these guys are, in the moment, high intensity, high adrenaline. Maybe they need to channel their emotions in a certain way. And, maybe it is helping guys like feel lighter in a high pressure moment. I think they all know that, look, this is, if you want to rank distractions as far as off or on field issues, there's still a lot more things that could be a lot worse. And I think the guys view an emotional player who is talented and volatile as something that can up their adrenaline and maybe help them relax in tough moments. I don't think he's an issue to the team, but I think he was an issue. He is an issue when they're losing and when the head coach, on week 3, said distraction. I mean, it's hard to perceive that any other way. And Eli Manning, too, I think is the guy that Odell has to watch. Early in the season, I think Eli Manning was the one, along with McAdoo, who was really kind of saying, let's rein it in here. But, of course, as you see, I mean, the connection's never been better. And so I think Eli recognizes, again, it's something that the Giants can deal with, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Hey, Pat, this is Zach By hanging out with Roger in studio. And again, Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, joining us. I have to say, from a personal standpoint with Odell, unfortunately, and this is just me talking, this is a guy who had one of the best receiving games that we've seen in the NFL this year, and second, highest receiving game in Giants history. But we're talking about all the extra stuff. Is Odell Beckham Jr. doing himself a disservice and taking away the actual attention from his on-the-field content?
It's a good question. I mean, that's a fair question. I do think, I think the answer to that is still no in general, because, look, he wouldn't even be on a roster if he wasn't doing the type of stuff that he did on the field yesterday. So, a guy who loses his cool and cost his team with, penalties and celebrations and and that kind of thing, and literally can't go making one big play without making a huge show of it. A guy like that would not be on an NFL roster on the field. It's a prerequisite that he is one of the biggest talents in the game, that it's all flying. And I actually think, I do agree with what some people believe about Beckham, which is, look, he is not just a great player, but he's a show. He's worth the price of admission. You buy a ticket to watch an athlete like Beckham. His performance on the field alone, if you talk to Giants fans, they don't buy tickets to go see him and see what his latest outburst is going to be. They buy tickets because they know that they're watching something special when he's on the field. It might be a little more satisfying if he didn't always say that too. If he just went out and did it.
Yeah.
But no, I think that people still for me, and for instance, I'm focused on the yards he gains here, and not necessarily the extracurriculars.
We're talking with Pat Leonard, New York Daily News. Giants get a much-needed win, 27-23. There was also, had they lost this game, we would be talking about the call on Rogers Cromartie. And as you wrote in your column today, and the Giants 3 turnovers to the Ravens, none, calling out a 15-7 penalty advantage in the home team's favor. And then the call on Cromartie was brutal. Brutal.
Right. No, I mean, and this is why, the angle I took writing the game was kind of, how did this team not at a certain point during Sunday's game just say, this is just not our year? I mean, that's how it started to feel. It's like Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The turnovers, the defense only gave up 6 points when you take away the penalty and the points off turnovers for the Ravens. And so you're giving up basically 6 points all game, fair and square defense, and you still have a great chance to lose. And especially when that call on Cromartie was made, I just figured, look, it's just not going to happen. It's not breaking their way. Rogers Cromartie had an interesting comment about that. He said when it was called, he told the official that he was explaining to the official his own rules. He said, if I'm looking back at the ball as we're doing a little hand fighting, with the pass underneath the pass, it's not PI. But if I'm looking at the receiver, it's PI. But for whatever reason, the official did not see it that way. I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL came down either publicly or behind closed doors and condemned that call.
Well, the Ravens end up scoring a touchdown. I thought the game was going to be over. I didn't think the Giants were going to lose this game. They're going to have 4 losses in a row, and now maybe this gets them going. Pat, is that possible? And there's still a lot of work to be done. And can't run the football. Defense was better, but it was against an offensive line. It was out 3 starters. I mean, is there enough positives here to say, hey, what the schedule is coming up? They're going to go to London, take on the Rams, and a bunch of home games right after that. Maybe that was obviously the game that they needed, the wake-up call that they needed, and now they go on and piece some wins together.
Well, I agree with you in that there is way too much still worrisome to think that it's not like, everything's turned around here. I mean, you referenced, so that touchdown scored and you figure the game's over. How about Larry Donnell on 3rd down catching that pass and not fighting for a first down, and also not even seeming like he knows, A, where the marker is, and B, whether a first down is necessary. I mean, I've never seen a play like that.
Pat,
I've watched a lot of football in my life. Never seen a play like that.
Pat, I got to jump in because I said the same thing last segment. That if Odell Beckham Jr. happens to drop that pass on 4th down, or Eli Manning overthrows him or underthrows him, that's on Donnell. I mean, he could have moved the chains, got a fresh set of downs. He's trying to juke with 3 yards of space in front of him.
Oh, it was unreal. And then you can go back earlier in the game. They have and lined up in the neutral zone, Jarrell Adams on punt coverage to give the Ravens an automatic first down. I mean, and like you said, they just flat out can't run. McAdoo isn't even pretending like he's trying to run the ball anymore. I mean, we're not even halfway through the NFL season yet. So I think to answer your question, I think Giants fans, Giants players, Giants coaches all know that just winning this game was not necessarily an indication that they've just righted the ship here. And I think during that game, like Roger was saying too, like you got the feeling watching that game. It's like, is it ever easy for these guys? It is never easy. And so that's more the worry is kind of you're watching these 2 teams, the Ravens and the Giants. It might very well might have been 2 500 teams. I mean, even when you look at when the season finishes up, it might have been 2 teams that are going to finish around 500 who who can win them, but they can also lose them, and they just come down to the last few plays every night. It's hard to watch these games as a fan. It's got to be brutal, but that's what it seems to be for the Giants. Nothing's easy.
Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, reacting Monday morning to the headline, and that is Odell Beckham Jr., the Giants, and we appreciate a few minutes from you today. We'll get back in touch, but thanks again, Pat. Have a great day.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Pat. Pat Leonard, beat writer, New York Daily News.